I'm confident and I'm hungry for it. And I think that helps. I think that's probably a reflection of you should really do what you're confident with, what you're passionate about, and what makes you happy. But also a willingness to do the crap jobs as well.
Creative Conversations.
Hey Zouk family, welcome back. It's a fantastic week as we're celebrating passing 500 videos since lockdown, and this is a really special chat for me. This week we're talking to an old university friend of mine who has quite literally gone from strength to strength. He used his bubbly and super infectious personality from university. As well as that, he's a super accomplished sportsman, not just a very good rugby player, but he's completed the quite intense and admirable Marathon des Sables. He gives back by teaching sport to children and also has a very, very successful sports podcast. I can't speak highly enough of this guy. I'm super proud of what he's achieved, and I think that you guys will really be interested in hearing what he's been up to. First of all, Joe, for the last 5 years, how have you been?
Yes, it's been a very long time, Joe. Well, first, thanks very much for having me on your pod and tied to the Zouk family. Very flattered, and I think we've just been chatting before and saying there's an element of imposter syndrome attached to being on here, but because I'm not quite where I'd like to get myself to, but definitely happy to share my story, which hasn't been a linear path, let's say, in getting to what I'm doing now. So yeah, mate, I've been really well over the last 5 years. I think, God, I was probably working in finance, working in the city when we last saw each other, but since then I've left that life behind me and pursuing a life in sports presentation, commentary, podcasting, but also teaching as well. I'm a sports teacher at a prep school in England now, which I absolutely love. So a far more balanced, active life to the one I was leading, but yeah, very happy, mate.
Mate, it's not just a balanced life, it's a messy positive life. You give back to the next generation. You interact with sports stars every week. I think it's a phenomenal career you've got and quite an envious one. Let me look first at the sports broadcasting. First of all, how did you get into that? Because a lot of people will be interested to know. And the second part is, it's definitely not as easy as it looks. I've seen your note taking, your prep work for big games, and you have such a vast knowledge of the sport. So how did you get into it, and how do you prep yourself for doing this job?
Ooh, a nerdy, geeky, nosy side certainly helps with regards to the game. I'll come on to that in a second. But how did I get into it? Well, I was quite disillusioned with my job in finance in the city in London, and I was really looking for a passion outlet, to be honest. I was a crude oil options broker for nearly a decade, and I've always loved rugby. I've played rugby all my life, and I was coaching on the side. I did all my qualifications and I was coaching for free at the weekends, just to have that human contact, to have that development of personalities, because finance is a pretty avaricious world, and you often might have a nice bank balance, but not necessarily a house or something great as an end product to look at come the conclusion. So from that, I then started writing for free for websites, and then I got a break writing for the Rugby paper, which is a dedicated national paper over in England about rugby. And then a stroke of fortune is how I got my first break on camera, is that I played sevens for a guy in a team in Kenya. 5 years ago, maybe it was now. It was quite controversial at the time because I actually missed one of my best mate's weddings for it. It was a last minute call up. It was an opportunity to go to Kenya, play with some international players, which is a dream of mine. And it was really difficult to say yes to it, but I had to be selfish in that moment. And now 5 years on, I'm grateful that I did do it. And sometimes you do have to make those selfish decisions, even though they're hard and you might be letting people down. Played in this nutcase tournament in Kenya, where, I mean, there were thousands of people watching. It's the biggest crowd that I've ever played in front of. But, I mean, they stopped the semi-final to land a helicopter on the pitch halfway through a game so that the mayor and the editor of the local newspaper that was sponsoring the tournament could get off with 10 cheerleaders all waving a copy of that day's paper. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. And then the helicopter just took off. Referee blew the whistle, and we carried on playing. I mean, unbelievable. But the guy who put the team together, he owns a streaming company, a production company. 2 years after this tournament, I was at a game at Twickenham for our university, Exeter, versus Hartbury in the University Cup final, which sadly we lost to a last-minute try. But he was filming the game, and I saw him. I hadn't seen him in ages, and I just said on a whim, because I've always wanted to present. As a kid, my dream was to be a Blue Peter presenter, but it felt like an unattainable goal. It felt like something that celebs did, you know, people that you couldn't reach to. And I said, look, Dickie, if you're looking for a bit of fresh talent on camera, I know my rugby, and I know the uni game inside and out. Why don't you give me a shot? And he said, do you know what, mate? I think you'd be quite good, actually. But I need to test you first. Can you come to Ibiza in 2 weeks and do a tournament with me that's going to be broadcast live for the weekend? I'll pay all your costs and I'll pay you to be there. And I was like, yeah, can I go to Ibiza for a week and be paid for it?
You made up your mind.
Yeah, and from there it just took off, and I've been the lead presenter for the University League in England for the last 3 years. That's developed into commentary as well. I've commentated on some tier 3 internationals in Europe, in Switzerland. What else? International deaf rugby on the BBC, wheelchair rugby. So I've done some Paralympic sports. And then that's built into stadium announcing. So I do a lot of stadium announcing. I do it in the Premiership for London Irish, Glamorgan in the T20 Blast for cricket. I do a Polish volleyball team in Brentford who are in the European Champions League. I've done synchronized swimming, weightlifting. I mean, you name it, I've done it. I just love the personalities around sport. I love being in the mix. But you're representing athletes who are dedicated to their craft, to their profession. You've got to admire that dedication and also that talent that they have, but you're really tapping into the drama and the emotions of sport because, yeah, look, you've got loads of people who can lift big weights or run fast, but, you know, what's their personality, what's their story, what's driving them, what's the narrative behind it? And that's the stuff that really fascinates me, and being able to translate that to an audience and transporting them into the room that I'm in or to the event so that, you know, they feel that they're there. So yeah, I'm plugging away. I haven't made it by any means. In fact, I have to correct you. I haven't actually presented on BT Sport. I do work for them in a production capacity, which again, I started at the very bottom. I got given an opportunity to do one job for them, which involves sitting in a van in a car park outside the stadium, clicking a button so that the triangle goes to the post and it says 33 meters to the kick. It is the lowest of the low job, honestly. But I just went in there and I thought, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it excellently, and I'm going to get out on the beers and be fantastic on the social. And hopefully they're going to want me back. And unfortunately they did. And yeah, I do a lot more work for them, a bit more cerebral work. You mentioned the note making, that I actually write the notes for the presenters and the commentators for Europe and for the Premiership. So I'll research the games, I'll find interesting storylines or relevant statistical battles or historical bouts between between the teams and the players, and then they'll use them. So mate, I'm fully embedded in the game. I love it.
Great. I think that's phenomenal. You're basically a jack of all trades. You're definitely a master of some, but you're integrated yourself throughout. And what I love about your story is you've not just taken the chances you've been given, but you created them for yourself. A lot of people will just sit back and wonder when luck's going to come to them, but you actually reached out and went for it, which is exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, I think that when you're passionate about something, it's easier to harass people for opportunities. Like in finance for that decade, I didn't have a natural flair for it, but I was good enough because I was personable. But I felt guilty reaching out to people and asking for opportunities and seeking business because I didn't feel in myself that I could execute it well enough for them. I wasn't deserving to pester people. Whereas with this, I'm confident. And I'm hungry for it, and I think that helps. I think that's probably a reflection of you should really do what you're confident with, what you're passionate about, and what makes you happy. But also a willingness to do the crap jobs as well. Like you can't be too proud when you're trying to get somewhere, can you? You know, if they'd asked me to make the teas as a 32-year-old, I'd have made the teas. In fact, I did make a couple of teas, but you know, you can't be high and mighty about these things. You've just got to do the graft and climb the greasy pole.
I collected the dirty glasses on Christmas Eve at the Dog and Fox in Wimbledon for about 3 years straight, and no other job. Just you had your trolley, go and get all the dirties. But I wanted a job in hospitality. Joe, I want to ask you something else. You don't just take that get up and go attitude, but this sheer determination into the presenting work. You also did it in the running that you've done, and you've done one of the hardest marathons in the world.
Yeah, running has always been an escapism for me, I'd say. I think a lot of people find solace and they find personal development in fitness. And for me, it was running. There's a purity to running that you don't need any equipment. You just need a pair of trainers and you lace up and it's you against the road or the mountain or the trail or whatever. And certainly when I was struggling with my professional identity, working in finance, I retreated to running. I mean, I would go running. I'd work 8 until 7:30 every night in the office. I'd get out, I'd run 10, 15 miles after work, get home, and I was exhilarated by it, absolutely exhilarated. I wouldn't have a destination. I'd just literally strike out north, south, east, or west, and then find my way home in some eventuality. I remember stopping off for a kebab actually, halfway through a run one night. When I was careering around London. So, but yeah, I think despite my partying lifestyle, which was in no small part fueled by you, Joe Ryan, back in my 20s, I managed to run pretty well, and I ran the New York Marathon twice. I actually broke the 3-hour mark on the second time I did it. I did 2:59, 31 seconds, which was like a huge achievement for me, massive. I didn't really expect that I was going to do that. And then motivated by a friend, I signed up to what is known as the toughest foot race on earth, which is the Marathon des Sables. It's 6 marathons in 6 days through the Sahara Desert, where you carry all your provisions for the duration of the race. So I had a backpack with food for 6 days. I had my bedroll, my sleeping bag, any other sort of bits and bobs that I needed or felt that I needed. I think I took one clean pair of pants. And yeah, you run a marathon the first day, a marathon the second day, a marathon the third day, a double marathon on the fourth day. Then you have a rest day, and then you run a marathon on the final day. And it was an extraordinary experience. Really extraordinary. It's probably the biggest achievement that I've made in my life, and it's weird looking back on it. It was 6 years ago now, and you know, there's moments when you're out there, you're in the middle of the desert, no one's around you. I think I'd just quit my job as well, and I was running through. I'm like, I don't have a job, I don't have a girlfriend, I'm in the desert, I'm on my own. I'm like, where's it all gone wrong? But to test yourself mentally and physically and take yourself to some dark places was pretty cool. And I mean, there's some amazing little features of the race as well. The race is run by this nutcase called Patrick Bauer, a Frenchman who was the first person to do it. And he's the race director, I think they call him. Every day at the start line, you have a big inflatable archway that they erect just for you to run through. So you run through this archway, and then there is just desert. It's just pure sandy expanse in front of you. Patrick Bauer is stood on top of a Land Cruiser. This guy's in his 50s, maybe 60s. They're blasting Highway to Hell by AC/DC, and he's on there with a microphone going, "You're warriors. You're like, this desert is nothing to you. We are going to go out there. We're going to run this, and we're going to love it." And you've got AC/DC just hammering away, and you're literally like foaming at the mouth. You're like a bunch of like rabid dogs about to be uncaged. You're like, "Yeah, we fucking love it, Patrick." The gun goes off, you run through the archway, and then you're like, "Oh Jesus, I've got a marathon to run now into the middle of nowhere." But you know, these amazing moments of atmosphere and camaraderie. And then at the end of the race, I often forget this. He's super connected in Paris, I guess. I don't know. The guy's a mystery. He's a real enigmatic character. He flew out the Paris Junior Symphony Orchestra to perform for an hour on a stage that they built in the middle of the Sahara Desert at the end of the race. We had the ceremony where they awarded first, second, and third. And then he said, "Look, as a treat for you guys, I've flown out the Paris Junior Symphony Orchestra, and they're going to play for you." So he sat in the middle of the Sahara, pitch black sky, stars like you've never seen before, and this orchestra playing for you. It was one of those moments that I'll never forget in life.
Wow, mate. I mean, I'd never heard those stories from you before. I mean, first of all, the achievement is exceptional. 6 marathons, 6 days, and a double marathon on one of them is wow. I mean, there's very few people on the planet that can do that or have done that. So congratulations. The second thing is, I mean, the New York Marathon itself is phenomenal, and to break 3 hours is a huge accomplishment. And then to sit under the stars and listen to an orchestra. I mean, you've collected some amazing memories. We've managed to collect some memories together. I've had some phenomenal times with you.
I think we've deleted some memories as well.
Yeah, we might be discussing them on this cast. And then I want to talk to you. You're very, very confident on the pod, Joe. That's because you've got a very successful pod of your own. And I've seen your pod, and I know it's actually seen as an insult worse than death if you don't give it a shout out, if you don't give it some face time.
Yeah, I get into my guests about this. Yes, my podcast, Seventh Heaven, which is your celestial one-stop pod for all things rugby sevens. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Seventh Heaven Pod. So yeah, it's a podcast about rugby sevens. Rugby sevens was the genre of rugby that I had my most success in as a player. I wasn't a big bruiser like your friend James Haskell, who you've had on the podcast, who was a great interview, by the way. So sevens lent itself more to my frame and my skill set. And I started a podcast last year with the GB Sevens Olympic silver medal winning captain, Tom Mitchell, and another England Sevens player, Richard de Carpentier. And we started it out of a box room in my flat, no previous experience of recording. I mean, I'm encouraging your viewers and listeners to go and listen to this. Please don't listen to episode 1 and 2. It's rubbish. I mean, it's an absolute shambles. But the more recent episodes are well worth a listen. We've got some great guests, top names in the game from a playing point of view, but we've diversified as well because everybody's adapting in these times. There's actually no World Series Sevens happening this year at the moment due to Corona. So there was no rugby to speak about, but we really enjoyed each other's company doing this podcast as a three together. And we've had probably the most interesting guest was the England Sevens psychologist and physio, who are a couple actually, and just delving into the physicality and the mental states of the players and the tools that they try and instill in them to handle pressure, to work cohesively as a team. I mean, it was fascinating, really, really fascinating. So it's been a great ride. I've learned a lot in terms of how to use Adobe, which I'm sure is something that you're learning to do at the moment, and a bit of self-growth on that. It's great fun. It's building, and hopefully it's going to get bigger and bigger. The podcast space is exciting. So yeah, fingers crossed Yeah, I can't think of anything else to say. Sorry.
I watch it. I don't have a huge sevens knowledge. I love rugby, but I don't have a huge sevens knowledge, and I watch it religiously because it's not just informative, and you do show a lot of the most exciting content from the seven seasons, some of the best tries you'll see. It's also the connection and the banter you have with the boys is really strong. I just have one complaint. I went to the same school as your Olympic silver medal winning captain, and his old man was my coach, and I didn't get nearly the amount of investment in my rugby career as Tom got in his. So I think that's a valid complaint that I'd like to send back.
Well, clearly Mitch's mum taught him everything then, because if his old man had a hand in the way that you played the game, Joe, then that speaks volumes. No, do you know what? Mitch is a great guy, and his old man is a fervent listener of the pod. And it's nice of you to remark on the chemistry, because all three of us went into it not really knowing what was going to happen. I actually didn't know Chippy very well at all. Mitch I knew a bit better, and I think I guess there's a lesson in there of you just got to try things, and it could have been catastrophic, and we could have done 3 episodes and it never saw the light of day again. But they took a gamble on me as a presenter, as someone who has never produced a podcast ever in his life and is a bit of a technophobe, to be honest. But, it drove me to learn and to be better. And I took a gamble on them for being good players, good personalities to have, and it's worked. And I think you just, in life, you just got to try things. You can't be fearful of failure. Funnily enough, the guy who gave me my first shot, this guy, Richard Jackson, who I played for out in this bizarre tournament in Kenya, on his email sign-off, he has a quote from Wayne Gretzky, the great ice hockey player. And Gretzky said, "I missed 100% of the shots I never took." And I think that's something that has stuck with me forever in my life, that, if you don't roll the dice, you're not going to get that lucky 7. So
congratulations again, man. I think it's phenomenal. It's another part of your career that I'm immensely impressed with, and you are an inspiration, because I remember when we were both just ambling around eating tuna baguettes outside the library at Exeter University. But you've always had not just an endearing personality, but you've always had a spark which has made you eternally popular. You were phenomenally popular in the university sports setup even then, and it's obvious that this is the place for you. And your success doesn't surprise me. Even if you're modest about it, doesn't surprise me. And what I think is probably the best achievement I envisage from what you've done is the teaching, because you're giving back to the next generation and passing on some of not just the wisdom, but the enthusiasm you have for, and you described it perfectly to me before, not just teaching the skills, but teaching people how to be the best form of themselves. So how did you fall into the teaching? And you're clearly going to display, you really love it, right?
Yeah, you're very kind about university, Joe. I think I just bought a lot of drinks for people, mate, and and they and that was the way to their hearts, definitely at our university. Yeah, mate, teaching. I never ever thought I'd be a teacher, mate. Never ever thought. I really walked through life, through school to university into a corporate job. I didn't have any thought about what I really wanted to achieve and how I wanted to impact people in the world. Hence I ended up in the city and being dissatisfied. But my commentary, presenting, producing career isn't where it needs to be yet. It's not where I'd like it to be, and it can't sustain me on its own at the moment. So I teach, and teaching was there for a bit of extra cash. I'm happy to say that, and just to paper over the cracks when freelance work is quiet. But I was really lucky. I got a gig through my rugby club Richmond at a school near me, at a prep school. So that's aged 4 till 13, all boys. And I've just loved it. I've absolutely loved it. I think being part of a community is a really powerful thing. And going in and singing off the same hymn sheet as everyone else in the sports department, and then having 400 boys who you're impacting on a daily basis. And I've been there for 3 years now, so I've seen their growth. I've got to know their personalities. They've got to know my personalities. And from A team to F team. It doesn't matter. We put in the same amount of energy and love into it. We tailor the way that we coach them, because obviously in the A team, you've got ambitious, competitive kids who are talented, skillful, and they want to take themselves to the next level. But for the F and the E team, it's about making them enjoy themselves, because I think it's really easy when you're passionate about something like sport that you think that everybody loves sport. Not everybody loves sport, and it's about finding elements of sport for them to enjoy. But stepping away from the sport itself, the big thing for us is character values that we're trying to instill in these boys. You know, being gracious in victory, generous in defeat, sportsmanship, teamwork, being resilient in moments of adversity. You know, you forget until you see these boys how much losing hurts to a young lad on the sports field. Like it pains them, and it's coaching them to deal with that adversity, because life is going to dish you up a lot of it. Unfortunately, it's not plain sailing, as my life and everyone's life is a testament to. So yeah, I feel very, very privileged, and I work for a great boss as well. I think that's something I've learned, is working for an inspirational person and a great boss can teach you a lot, and it really tells you how you would like to be as you mature as an adult. My boss at school is the former Canada rugby captain, and it's completely by chance. He's a legend, this guy, Schmidty. The first time BT Sport asked me to do a gig for them, I needed to go to Dublin and then to Belfast. So I was working in Ireland all weekend. I needed a Friday off school. And I said, look, Schmidty, it's a big opportunity. It's BT Sport. And he just turned around and goes, Byrnesy, when BT come calling, you don't say no, brother. That's the big leagues. You're having that Friday off. You're going. And, you know, to have a guy who bend over backwards to support your dream, it makes me want to work harder for him. And I think that, you know, it's inspirational.
Hey, phenomenal. And the support structure you talk about is ideal, that you've got someone who supports your dreams, but also what you described as setting up the pillars for the next generation, something that I think is monumentally powerful, mentoring. And you touched on something, all of us, myself included, several times over made a ton of mistakes. Like I have a saying myself, where sometimes I'm fortunate enough when we open new outlets, newspapers do interviews and say, how do you describe the success in your career? I say, I've never done anything right without doing something wrong 10 times. And I think you just keep bouncing back, Joe. But I really admire that you've created these opportunities out of nothing. It's not even taking shots. You've created the space to take the shots, which is phenomenal.
Oh, mate. I mean, when I left finance, though, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And the biggest hurdle, which I'm glad I overcame, was my own pride. And I worked on building sites. I poured pints at my local pub for a bit of cash in hand, just to pay the bills, so that I wasn't sort of dipping into my savings. And, you know, it was a period where I was 32 years old. I used to live a pretty high lifestyle in the city, and I found myself fitting loft extensions for a mate who I played rugby with in America once, which again, I guess is an example of the power of sport and the connections that you make with people on tour, for like 80 quid cash a day. And then I was going and pulling pints at my local boozer, and I thought, I've got an economics degree from a top university, and I used to have this job, and now I'm here. Like, am I a loser? But that was part of the process to get me into teaching, to give me the flexibility to pursue presenting and commentary. So I think that would probably be my biggest piece of advice. I should say, it all sounds very virtuous, what we've been talking about, like that I'm crushing it at life and I've done all great things. I've made so many mistakes, and I was a nightmare to have working for you when I was in my 20s and working in the city. You know, I was late, and I didn't care enough, and I probably didn't work hard enough either. But I learned from behaving like that, and I'm a lot more mature. So there's a lot of mistakes in my life, and, you know, things that I wish that I'd done better, but certainly, hopefully, I'm on the right path now.
Yeah, well, mate, it's honourable of you to admit the mistakes, but no one's perfect. And second of all, as I said, I'm more than enthusiastic to compliment you on where you are, because I think it's phenomenal. And like I've said numerous times, it's a great inspiration. And I've been watching from quite some distance geographically, but you're just doing so well. And the nice thing, Joe, if you look in the comments under whatever post you make, the amount of people that are happy for you is also phenomenal. And that's the lovely thing about the kudos. I think we were lucky. We went to university with a really great tight bunch of people. There were a bunch of good lads and Max. And there's also, irregardless of mistakes, whatever, the learning's there. And I normally finish off every single chat with asking a piece of advice, but you've given advice solidly all throughout, loads of different pieces. So I think I should pick some better questions to rule you out. Like as what I would consider a sports expert, what's your favorite sport memory of all time?
Oh man, you put me on the spot here. What is my favorite sports moment of all time? Yeah, I'll delve recently into my memory bank. That seeing Exeter Chiefs win the European Cup against Racing 92 a fortnight ago was just amazing. The story of Exeter is well told, coming up through the nether regions of English rugby to gain promotion a decade ago and now be champions of Europe. I cannot believe that this small town, this small city in Devon is the best team in the whole of Europe. And we have a close connection, you and I, Joe, because we went to university in Exeter, and there's an umbilical cord between the uni rugby and the Chiefs themselves. There was a lad playing, Sam Skinner, who left Exeter Uni 3 years ago. And it just makes me so proud of our uni and our rugby club and what Chiefs have achieved. Even though I'm a London Irish man, you can't help but admire them. And oh my God, it was such a tense finish. My girlfriend put up a story on Instagram. Me in the living room dancing on the spot for the last 60 seconds, and when Exeter got the final penalty that kind of sealed it for them, jumping up and hitting the chandelier in the living room. So yeah, that was amazing. That's everything that I mentioned about sport. It's like the tension of the game itself, but it's the story of the club and where it's come from, and the players and the characters who are involved in that. Like Rob Baxter, their coach, he used to coach the university team, and now he's the best coach in Europe. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I saw that myself. It's phenomenal. They're double champions, no?
Yeah, they won the Premiership last week as well. I missed that game, unfortunately, because I was spending time with said girlfriend's family. But just to be European champions you think about the greats. You think about the greatest teams in Europe, and now Exeter are one of them. Think about like Delalio's Wasps, Martin Johnson's Leicester, and now Exeter Chiefs are in that pantheon. It's awesome.
It is a phenomenal achievement, indeed. And I just finished Haskell's biography, and he talks about winning the trophy himself. But then when you think of all the French sides over the years that have also dominated, and then for Exeter to win a league is phenomenal. I'm very disappointed. It's the first time you disappointed me in this whole conversation, that the highlight of your sporting career wasn't a breakaway from his own 22 when Joe Ryan made it from his own 22 to the 22 of the prison side in Exeter to offload to Kevin Danaher-Smith to put it over the line because I couldn't make it to finish the try. But I'll let you off that. And your commentary would have been ideal during that situation as well.
Would you have been able to hear the astonishment in my voice? Hey, it was a truly I was there moment, Joe. A truly I was there moment.
Yeah, it was good times. It was Rob Rooney's. I think technically it was the fourth 15. I don't even know what I was doing there myself. So there must have been a few people who had a bender in the welly the night before, and I managed to somehow get called up because I lived with the guy. But yeah, that was a sporting highlight in itself.
It was a pretty motley crew, if I recall.
Yeah, there was. Tom Fox. We had some ringers in Tom Fox Arnold. Even Tom Harding appeared on occasion, but some of them risked getting injured. So I thought, I'm not doing this for any love, not money. But yeah, it was good times. But Joe, look, first and foremost, thanks so much for taking the time. And I have to admit, it's very rare that I feel that I don't have to do much talking, and with you just do it so seamlessly. And your experiences, are not just supremely interesting and great fun, but there's so many learning curves in there. And we have a huge millennial following at Zouk. I mean, it's been around for 30 years in Asia. And majority of people who would utilize the clubs, the bars, the restaurants are in that age group where they're wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Just graduated, and the world is a mess. But you've just summed up perfectly how your life has pivoted so many times, but you've come out smiling and you've basically followed your dreams. I think that's the best message of all. And just because you don't necessarily follow the right route immediately, it really doesn't mean anything at all. You can continue to find your meaning in life. And thanks so much for giving me some great nostalgia and it's just been great to catch up with you, Joe. You've been an incredible guest.
Mate, thanks so much for having me. Honestly, incredibly flattered to be on your platform, and hoping to get out to Malaysia to try a bit of Zouk one day, Joe, because it looks like the events that you put on are absolutely insane. I know it's a really tough time for the entertainment industry, but I think that everyone in the world is yearning for that moment when they can rub shoulders with a stranger who's having an incredible amount of fun alongside next to them, and by the end of the night they're no longer a stranger again. So hopefully the Zoom and Microsoft Teams sessions are going to dry up and we're going to be back on the dance floor soon.
Fingers crossed, my friend. But in the meantime, take care, stay safe, keep doing what you're doing, check in with us, and congratulations again.
Top Gun, it's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Frequency.